Sheet in, Yanni. Sheet in. Grind. Grind, Yanni.
Puff on. Faster. Grind. Sheet.
My name is Matt. Follow along as I turn Duracell, the legendary ocean racing sailboat, into a comfortable cruising home. So this week we're getting into some design work for the boat. The past couple weeks we've been working on sealing up the foredeck and finishing up the stern modification. A new mast may be on the horizon for us. As that comes together, we will keep you updated, and I don't want to jinx anything, but Evan, the naval architect, and I have been working on a potential sail plan for the boat. What it will look like is a cutter rig that's fractional, so it'll be 2 upwind head sails, a staysail, and a working jib. And then a Code 0 style sail, which is a light wind, downwind or reaching sail, and then an asymmetrical spinnaker. And both of those are masthead sails. So when decisions are made regarding the mast, we'll let you know. But for now, we can take the information that we've come up with and start laying out the deck, laying out where all the lines are going to be run and how the cockpit's going to be laid out. The goal is to be able to trim the mainsail while at the helm, have lots of flexibility with trimming head sails and reefing and raising sails, and have a really comfortable experience in the cockpit when we're entertaining, eating, just hanging out, whether we're on the hook or while we're sailing. So I'd love to hear your comments, your opinions about how the cockpit is laid out when we're all done with this today. This is our working deck layout design. I could talk for hours about this, so I'll try and keep it brief. Our goal is to have 3 winches on each side, 2 steering wheels with pedestals, and benches long enough for sleeping on. First, I needed to extend back the raised cabin back to the cockpit. This will lead the lines from the mast along the doghouse, but off of the deck back to the cockpit. The lines from the mast then enter the cockpit coaming, which is a raised surface around the cockpit. This is where winches will be placed, but also helps keep water out of the cockpit. I got the coaming slightly level so that I could template a couple supports for under the coaming surface. Once the coaming surface was in place, then I started figuring out where winches could go. These are the original Duracell winches. They are size 65s, and as you can see, are both very large diameter and very tall. I did a lot of pondering and scheming to see how I felt. Quickly I realized that the coaming surface needed to be lowered about 2 inches, so that lines coming through the clutches at the end of the doghouse could lead fairly to the winch. This made a huge difference in many ways. With the coaming where I wanted it, I started to build benches. I designed them following cockpit bench dimension standards. These standards make sitting in the cockpit comfortable while both at sea and on the hook. I led 4 lines from the foredeck to simulate 2 reef lines, a halyard, and a main sheet. I wanted to make sure that there is enough room for all the lines to come along the doghouse without interfering with each other. I needed to make sure that the winches had enough room around them to do work so that winch handles wouldn't run into each other and they wouldn't run into things like doghouses. The next project, as you can see, is to start designing and mocking up the benches, the cockpit coamings, and extending the cabin top back along the doghouse. So the reason that I'm extending the cabin top back is because there will be lines running from the mast back into the cockpit. The goal is to have a main halyard, 2 reef points, and a spinnaker halyard in the cockpit so that we don't have to leave the cockpit to put the reefs in or raise the mainsail or spinnaker. The extended cabin top is a very narrow area, and so we're extending that back to the cockpit, and then that leads into the cockpit coaming, which is this little raised part above the side decks, and then that's kind of integrated into the benches. Now the lines run from the mast down this extended cabin top back to this point here where the cockpit coaming begins. I've got this at a little bit lower plane than the cabin top side because these winches are so tall that we need to be able to stand above them, and lowering the coaming allows us to work over the winch, like kind of like this, a little bit better, having it lower. Right now, I've got this set up with 3 winches. These winches came off of the boat originally. So this first one will be the utility winch. So this will be the winch that raises sails and does reefing. The next winch is for jib sheets and headsail sheets. So spinnaker, code 0, jib, staysail. And then this last winch will be for like the main sheet and the traveler. This one you'll be able to control while you're steering the boat. So if a big puff hits the boat and the boat heels over dramatically, you can drop the traveler and or ease the main sheet. As you can see, the top of this cockpit coaming is almost parallel to the deck forward of where the old traveler was. So it's at a pretty good angle outboard, and which makes the winches kind of point up and out a little bit, point outboard, which is a little funny to me. So what I'm going to do is when I mock up the other side, I'm going to adjust this angle so it's a little bit more level with the water and see how I feel about it. The benches are 76 inches long, so it's easy for people to sleep on if they want to. There'll be tons of storage on the inside. There'll probably be 2 or 3 places to open the seats. There will be little cubbies underneath the winches so I can both access the underside of the cockpit coaming to install the winches, but also to store stuff like lines and winch handles. And the seat back is about the minimum that the standards specify. It's only 15 inches tall, but we feel like at this angle it's a pretty good height for us. There will be obviously cushions, we hope, and so it'll be pretty comfortable. And the seat of the bench as well is 20 inches wide, and so it is also the maximum width of a seat that they specify, but it's better for sleeping on. So when somebody is on watch, their partner can be snooze along, ready to go if you need them to be there. So a few compromises that we're making by making the seat back at more of an angle is that when we would like to eat out here sometimes, and people have to kind of sit up away from the seat back in order to be at the table. But when the boat is heeling over and the bench and the back are like this, then it's more comfortable to sit in this position when the boat is heeled. So I'm going to change it a little bit from the other side, and hopefully it feels we'll see how it feels. And then the last thing is, this is just a rough draft. So things like radiuses in the corners, on these outside corners and inside corners everywhere, have not been done, and there will be nice big radius, like 2-inch radius in them. And then
that means like rounded rather than
the edges will be rounded or even chamfered so that it's actually like a plane, like a flat plane here. That way when the boat's heeling, you can, as Al pointed out, you can stand on that chamfer really nicely. So now I'm going to mock up the other side, and I'm going to adjust a few things on the other side, and then we can compare that new design to this design, see which we like better. So first I made the starboard side. It's interesting because the top of the cockpit combing is angled really, it's got a pretty severe angle outboard. So the winches, as you can see, are kind of pointed out from the boat. And what we wanted to see is how it would feel if we changed the top of the cockpit combing on this side to be more closer to parallel with the water. How it changed the geometry of the whole bench is that now this seat back is shorter and the angle between the seat and the seat back is smaller. So it's like 110 degrees on that side, it's like 100 degrees on this side. See, this side is more angled than that side.
Okay, let's switch. I think I like that side better.
Can you put your feet up across like this? I can't.
Nope.
So we'd have to have like a
table here like this.
Not like that. There'll be like a low bar that you can just put your feet up against like this.
Alright. Yeah, I think I like that one better. This one. What about you?
I think so.
Just like feels more comfortable.
This one has it's only about half an inch.
Yeah, definitely that one.
Again, this winch is for reefing and a halyard, probably like a spinnaker halyard, whereas this winch is for jib sheets, head sail sheets, trimming. And there'll be 3 different ways to be able to trim it. I could trim it from inside the cockpit, sitting over it. I could straddle the combing, trim this way, or be down on the outside of the combing, trimming over it this way. So we have options for being comfortable while trimming the head sail. Overall, we're happy with how these turned out. For now, we're going to ruminate on them for a while, make sure there aren't any changes we'd like to make, and work on other projects in the meantime.
We have 2 new patrons to thank this week. Thank you so much to Rob in Canada. He flies airplanes and helicopters and loves to sail. This is his Douglas 32, which he sails on Lake Ontario. Thank you so much.
And thank you to Klaus, who's in Sweden. Klaus recently bought a 50-foot aluminum ketch. It was the last boat built and designed by Rob Director in the New England area, and it is a really incredible offshore racing yacht that he's going to turn into a cruising boat for himself. I think he's going to spend the next 10 years working on it, is what he told me, and so we are really, really excited for you, Klaus. It's an incredible project, so thank you.
And thank you to Pitt, who we did not hear from, but we hope to.
Yep, thank you to everybody. If you're interested in joining our Patreon community, you can find us on the Duracell Project at patreon.com. And remember, if you watch on Patreon, if you're a Patreon member, you can watch the videos without ads. So, little perk to becoming a Patreon member. So, thank you again very, very much for helping support the project.